All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Aspen Real Estate Experience. I'm excited this morning to host a longtime great friend and client, partner, all kinds of things, Mark Friedland. I would say if you are not on mute, if you don't mind, just hit mute on your phone or your device so that we can have a nice conversation without interruption. That would be wonderful. So, Mark, good morning. I don't even know where to start. I've thought a lot about this call. I'm very, very excited for it, just given our personal relationship. For those of you on the call who don't know, Mark and I have worked very closely together for a long time, not as much the past few years, just given my role with Aspen Snowmass Sotheby's, but very closely for a long time. And Mark has been an incredible mentor to me, a friend, like I said, business partner, all kinds of things. But I'm going to start with a very easy softball question for you, Mark. When you get on the gondola and somebody says to you, and you just met them for the first time, what do you do? How do you respond?
I actually have a scripted response because, it happens frequently. And I generally say, I do real estate stuff. And I use the term stuff because it's so amorphous, that hopefully the conversation stops.
And when it doesn't, and they say, what do you mean by stuff?
Well, I've never had a sign on a property, as with our company name or my name. So, and unlike some other folks in town, I'm not really out there. I'm not in the newspapers a lot, or, I avoid the fray. So I say, well, I do some development and I'm with a group. I always say it's a group that has some buildings and there's a group of guys and I help them out. I try to avoid, you know, getting into a deep dive about myself.
Fair enough. How did you first get into real estate? What was it that spurred you, or what was the gateway drug to get you started?
So if we go way back, my dad used to buy tracts of land in an area called Kissimmee in Apalachicola in Northwest Florida. And I'd be on the back of the truck with him all the time with a surveyor. And we'd go like 5 in the morning and he would be surveying these huge tracts of land that were 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 acres. And ironically, much of it became the interchanges for Disneyland in South Florida. Well, actually, West Florida. But then my dad unfortunately got caught under the Carter administration with the 18% interest rates. And all the guys who were land speculators essentially got wiped. So I witnessed that phenomenon. So that taught me a lot of lessons as well. It taught me about the trigonomic nature of life. So it was all good. So that
Well,
was my first intro. And I don't even know if you know that.
you say all good, but that's a very eye-opening and I'm sure at the time personally hard entry into real estate. Seeing that, I think a lot of people would run or go a different direction. What was it that pulled you in even closer?
So my dad always taught me that the greatest impediment to success is the fear of failure. The greatest assurance of failure is the failure to recognize failure. So I thought that I could manage that paradigm. And I noticed that when my friends, and this is going back 37, 38 years ago, when my friends were barely getting out of bed in the morning because they were still hungover, I thought if you could just wake up and go to work, you could do pretty well with Aspen. So I just got up and went to work.
So one of the things you and I have talked about, you make it sound so simple, but one of the things we've talked about a lot over the years is there are a lot of opportunities in this valley, whether that's in real estate or other businesses, and it tends to be the people who I believe show up every day, go to work and apply themselves. And I've watched you work incredibly hard close up. I think it's hard for people from the outside in many facets of the local real estate economy to see that it looks so easy. Would you describe just a general day in the life of Mark Friedland, what that looks like, what it feels like?
Well, like today. So I started at about 4:45, and Millard's always, as you know, conversing with me by 5, 5:15, 5:30.
Millard, for those of you who don't know, is Mark's real estate attorney.
And you were usually joining the fray around 5:30, 5:45. Uh,
Slacker.
slacker. Tiffany was usually good by 6:30. And I thought that while others slept, we could accomplish a lot more. And I'm not, as you know, I don't have a schedule per se. I've never had one. So I kind of am like a human ping pong ball bouncing around, not knowing what my day is going to be. And we always have new things popping up. As you know, I never really had an agenda. And then I will do stuff, and I usually take off around 3, 4 in the afternoon, go to yoga or Pilates, and then I have dinner with my wife, and then I work again from like 7 to 9, maybe, and then around 10:30, 11, I check my email, and go back to bed. I never believed there were days of the week. I never
Right.
understood that concept, and I just thought you should go for the opportunity when it existed. And I also, frankly, don't understand my peer group fascination with playing pickleball or golf, all day, every day. Uh, I like doing all those things for an hour or two, but then I have a mind that needs to be exercised.
Me
So
too. So one of the things I really like about what you just shared is the routine aspect or the repetitive aspect to it, because I also, as you know, share that. And it just occurred to me while you were saying that, I don't know why this didn't occur to me before. And all the times that you and I have gotten together and had lunch together, I have found that you are very pragmatic and routine based with your lunch every day. So for years, it was
but
we would go to 520 Grill and you'd order the exact same thing. Now I think Silver's Bagels, you've had some places
right,
in between where you do that. And something I'd mentioned to our group at a sales meeting recently is what I've read and observed is a lot of high producing, high performing people, whether that's executives or just people in the business world. One thing that seems to be in common is they try to routine as much of their day where they don't have to think about it. So the example I gave previously was, I think, Steve Jobs and others who they would wear the same thing every day. So it's just one less thing to think about.
yeah.
Is lunch like that for you?
Yes. It's funny with my wife Hunter. I always tell her, don't ever ask my opinion literally about anything unless it's the end of the world, because I have a routine, and I don't care what furniture you want to buy or where we're going on a trip. Just tell me to show up and what we're going to do. And like even my lunch, I don't want to think about. And you might recollect that we always went around 11, 11:15 in the morning, because even that part of it was kind of coordinated so that we wouldn't even have other people around, that we could order more quickly. We can get in and out. Michael Dell taught me something years ago. In your office, never have chairs or couches, because then people stay or they want to feel comfortable. Make them stand and just tell you what they have to say and leave. And I think that's been a big part of my mantra. The downside of that is I didn't create tons of random relationships with people. As you know, I have an incredibly small circle of friends, but I try to be polite and nice. I think I saw Lucy on one of these, like, I don't know, someone walking by or something, like someone like Lucy I've known for decades. I think I saw Evan Benning. I've known him Evan Benning actually employed my wife 30 something years ago. So a lot of the people I know for a very long time, but I don't really catch up with people very much. I'm pretty practical.
Yeah, and so I should clarify when I say all these lunches, I mean, lunch was really get there, order, and let's get down to business and like stream through a ton of stuff in 30 minutes, munch down some lunch, and then marching orders or direction and go about the day. And I think that's, to me, again, a very good routine base. How can you maximize the day so that, as you touched on earlier, you get to a point in the day, especially if you're up at 4:30 or 5, maybe it's 3 or 4 in the afternoon where now it's me time. Now you can go do
Mhm.
some exercise or go do something in your case with Hunter or whoever, and actually capture a real part of the day, which I think is great. I don't want to sidetrack very far. I just want to point out in the background, you have quite a few football helmets. You're an avid sports memorabilia collector, historical document, and other parts of Americana collector. Is that something that you use as an outlet from real estate, or is that something that just defines you in a totally different way?
I think it's an outlet to a large extent. Like this morning, I was I had just bought a couple of the jerseys that were worn in the Olympics for the hockey guys,
Mhm.
and I was getting them matched where you could show the exact game and the exact minute of the game the guys were wearing the jerseys, and it's a nice diversion for me. And quite frankly, it's been incredibly lucrative. But that was completely by accident,
Right.
and um, I don't know. It's just a way of my escaping momentarily. But all throughout the day, I work on my collection. I'd say not an hour or 2 hours goes by where I'm not like looking at something. And I've created an incredible website that's just my collection, that's personal. And I don't know. I collect Lincoln's and Washington's letters, their handwritten letters, and also the battle orders from the Civil War. So I've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of those documents. And I just find it to be really interesting. And I think it's a cooler thing to leave my children than a pile of money. I don't see the point. I want them to have things that are reflective of history and culture.
Well, I would say they probably want the pile of money, but seeing your collection, it's hard to argue against. So you have some amazing, amazing things.
Well,
Um,
like everything, they'll find the middle ground.
yeah, exactly. Well, let's go from softball to a little bit more hardball.
Sure.
What's the most challenging thing about your job today?
People.
In
No,
what way?
no hesitancy whatsoever.
Yeah, in what way?
Well, first of all, as you've heard me say for decades, my truth is only my truth, and it shouldn't be anyone else's truth. It's very important. So everything I'm about to say is my opinion, but I completely respect the fact that my opinion may have absolute, irrelevance to most people. So for me, I believe that coming out of COVID, there was a new dynamic, sort of socio-psycho personality shift in the American culture, and it's permeated down through our society. And frankly, I see it more so in the kids that are like 20 to 35, where for whatever reason, and I don't want to get a deep dive because I don't want to go into the COVID mess, but the stay at home, yada, 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 created this phenomenon where people don't feel like you did, like you have to show up all day, you have to be there. It's just like there's just maybe it's me and I'm just like a dinosaur and I come from a different age and I just expect more of people. Having said that, there are people like you and Millard and Lex, for example, Wendy Whitman, quite frankly, and she's unusual, but man, she shows up. There are people that just show up, and there are many who do not show up at the rate or pace they did previously.
Yeah. Well, I can definitely see that that's an important part of your
Yeah.
business and how it relates. What is it that you enjoy most right now about what you do?
Unequivocally, what I enjoy most is going. I went over to 5 different properties, 6 I guess, yesterday that were involved in development, and I just like I sit outside and like all those people working, we're helping to feed their family. I have guys now who I was at the hospital when their kids were born, and those kids are going to college. And these people came across the border and couldn't speak English and were essentially illiterate, and now their kids are going to college. And it's just an incredibly good feeling. I'm not working for myself that much anymore. Um, yeah, I'd say that's probably the thing that gets me out of bed the fastest. The other thing is, um, I was one of the people. I was the three-legged tortoise. Was told by many of the aficionados in Aspen that I didn't have a chance. Shannon Sweeney was similar, by the way, and he certainly has done amazing. Uh, and I think I want to prove not to others but to myself. If I was interested in proving it to others, I'd have signs everywhere, right? But I wanted to prove to myself that I could do what others said I could not do.
You've expressed to me a couple times the gratitude you have of employing people, giving them opportunities for their seeing their families, et cetera. And I always am so impressed by that, but also in the back of my mind, feeling like, okay, that's a very real part of the business that you've built and what you've done over the years, but it totally ignores the built environment of the actual homes, the
Yeah.
product, if you want to commercialize it that way. So I want to shift and just say, what's your most favorite project that you've done to date?
Wow. I mean, I was doing I for all the bank. I don't know if you know the banking world is like totally upside down in Aspen. Everyone's leaving and moving banks, and banks are being bought and so forth. So I had to do a study recently for a bank because PNC bought First Bank, and I'm First Bank's largest client in the state. So they really wanted a deep dive on this. Speaks to what you're talking about, and I didn't realize that if you took the present value of what we've done, it's about 1.6 billion. That's not what we sold it for, but the present value, it's kind of crazy. Um, and I was looking back at that group of stuff, and I'd have to say it's not my favorite project and it's not my favorite outcome. And I didn't make the most money by any stretch of the imagination, but I liked. the creativity that we brought to 530 Hallam and then the split and then
Mhm.
taking off the back of the house that was illegal and then creating the contemporary one next to it. And it's not by no stretch of the imagination is it anywhere in the top 25 or even, I don't know, maybe 50 of the expense ledger, but it it was really challenging and it sort of opened my eyes a lot as to what could be done. The I was driving around the West End a couple of weeks ago with Hunter on our e-bikes actually because the weather's so weird, and like literally every other block, was something we had done, and it was kind of cool, right? I mean, it was a lot of fun. Um, it's not as much as it seems because it's over decades, right? So it seems like a lot when you look at it. Oh, today, but it didn't happen today. It happened over a long period of time.
Well, it is a lot, and that's a
Mhm.
staggering number for such a small town and market environment. And yeah, 530 Hallam, I was involved in that. That was a lot of fun. That was very cool. I want to take you down memory lane briefly because I have a different favorite project
Okay.
that I was involved in with you. And I just want to set the table briefly that it was probably around 2000, I'm guessing 13, 12 or 13, when it was suggested that I reach out to you that you were doing a lot of projects in town and looking for more. And at the time, you had been focusing, I think, more on condos and some townhome
Yep.
remodels, but looking to try and do some more single family stuff. And I showed you a couple of properties and trying to get a feel for what you were looking for, and learned pretty quickly that you would make decisions very quickly and knew exactly what you were looking for and knew even better what you weren't looking for. And so the challenge was set down for me to try and find something that you would dig into. And after 5 or 6 failed attempts over a span of several months, and me scratching my head as to how can I find something that Mark would actually dig into, I took you up to 120 Red Mountain Road,
Oh, yeah. I
which
was That was going to be my other one, by the way.
oh, really? Which for
Yes.
for those who probably know, that is right before you start actually before you go down and then start going up Red Mountain Road. It's tucked back on the right. There are 3 homes back in there, and 120 tucked in the very back. An incredible setting right over Hunter Creek. And as you recall, the home was an older but classic,
Yeah.
very cool home. And I at the time, and I was looking this up earlier to try and refresh my memory because it was a fascinating exchange that ensued was we walked out of there and you said, I'd like to make an offer. I said, great. It was listed originally at 5,750, but I feel like at the time maybe it was five. It might have still been at 5,750. And I said, what do you want to offer? And you said 2.5 million. And I said, okay, this is going to be a hard offer to present, but I'm all in. Let me draft it up. And, literally, I think it was like 30 minutes later, Millard had already reviewed the offer, and I am presenting it to the listing agent. I'll let her remain nameless, but anybody can look it up if they want. And I presented the $2.5 million offer. And I was berated left, right, up, and down about presenting such a lowball offer that this was never going to fly. The seller would never even respond to this. And I just meekly and I tried to politely say, this is an offer and this is a real buyer if you would present it and let your seller decide. Well, lo and behold, I think less than a week later, we were under contract, and maybe 2 weeks later, you closed at $3.1 million and we were off to the races. It was our first project working together, and you did a beautiful remodel on that and turned around and sold it at over $8 million. So it was a pretty cool way to see how you operate. And I share that with everybody because there was a pace involved there that you were able to do because you surrounded yourself with the right people and the right knowledge. And I want to fast forward to today and say, how do you look at the market? How do you make decisions? It's a lot I find more confusing after COVID in terms of we've gone through these incredible price increases and construction costs more than everything else. So how do you distill that down and continue to find projects, which you do in this market?
So I've always disdained the whole paralysis by analysis phenomenon or paradigm, what have you, construct. I believe that it should be visceral. Over the last, 13 or 14 months, for example, we bought like the Willits gas station, whatever. Lex showed it to me. I'm like, I don't know, this seems like a really good thing to own. And I bought it. The butcher's block, it was probably in the last 60 days, 90 days. I just thought, man, it's across the street from the Little Nell. it's only a 4% return, but no one's ever woken up around here and done poorly, across from Little Nell. And we own the grog and all that stuff next to it. So it was logical. The way I just think that people get too caught up in whether the Strait of Hormuz is closed, uh, or their grandmother doesn't feel well today. The reality is that certain things are just good, and I just believe you're just supposed to buy them. We're closing on 324 draw, which we discussed. I went up there, I sat in the house. I'm like, oh my God, I can't build this for X and I can buy it for Y, which is less than X. And I don't know, it just seems like a good thing to do, and we have several things right now. We have some other stuff under contract, which I feel confident we're going to close on. And in each instance, I went up there, I looked around, and I was like, okay, I think we should do this. I've never lost money ever where I bought something that was a remodel opportunity or something that would be a teardown dirt, which was in a really good location. It just didn't matter if I paid 9 million or 12 million. Now, that's not to say you should pay 30 million for something worth 9 million, but within reason, if you have a good location and you can execute a good plan, you can do well. Well, the other thing I believe that we didn't touch on that I think is extremely important is that we, as you know, I value speed, and I value efficiency. Unlike all these other yo-yos in town, I looked up, by the way, our record, Andrew, is we had 16 contracts at one point going simultaneously, either buying, selling, offering, etc. You never waited more than 20, 30 minutes for Miller to respond. It didn't matter if it was 6 in the morning or 11 at night or, 20, 30 minutes later. It wasn't like some of these law firms in town that have 9 associates and, 6 of their dogs looking at the paperwork. Like, you give it to them, we respond, boom, we do it. And I believe it allows you to do more, but it's very dissociative to the other side of the transaction because they have their group moving at a snail's pace. And you were able to, and then your mind was as bright and as quick as anyone I ever met in my life. So you were able to take that paradigm and run with it. And I think that gave us a big advantage. In terms of the market today, I'm going towards this jewel box concept. I'm going full in. I believe there's a market for 4,000 to 4,500 foot, really beautiful homes on lots that may hold 10,000 feet. So I'm theoretically overpaying by double for the land, but I think the location's great. And I'm getting lots of calls because of what I've done over the years. Tons of people, they're referring their friends and their relatives and so forth. And now we're getting the phenomenon where the kids of the people that bought homes from me who grew up coming to Aspen want homes. And they're all saying, I want to spend 20 to 40 million. I don't want to spend $100 million. I can afford to live on Willoughby, but I don't want to be in a 15,000 or 9,000 foot house. So I'm focused really heavily on this 25 to $40 million market for new product.
I think it's very exciting and it makes me think about how you have over the last 15 plus years that I've been more involved with you, really morphed many times the locations around the valley, the property types. And it's not to say there's always been a niche because, like you just rattled off a few commercial properties that you've purchased in the last year. You're focused on what you're calling jewel box, 4,000, 4,500 square foot homes. In many parts of the country, that's a huge home. Here, that's obviously very
Yeah.
small relative to what a lot of our clientele are looking for. And I want to just rewind a little bit of what you spoke to, which is there's not some big fancy pro forma. I've worked with a lot of developers, a lot of investors. I know many people on this call have, and it's very typical that there is a whole process, and sometimes that's for the investor developer themselves. Sometimes it's for their actual equity partners or their investors. Sometimes it's for their lender. Sometimes it's for all of them. Sometimes it's just matter of course they do it, but that is not your process. And yet you have an incredible cadre of people who follow you and invest in your projects, absent having some rigorous financial pro forma analysis. You have very strong lenders and bank relationships, absent having some incredibly, 5 page or 25 page financial pro forma. You tend to send out, I've seen one email, simple, one couple paragraphs. Here are the economics, here's the deal. And that doesn't slow you down, doesn't get in your way, and also hasn't prevented you from being obviously very successful in what you do. So there's this visceral feeling that you have. and you know when you go and you see a property. But of course, and when you say, hey, it doesn't matter if I pay 9 million or 12 million, on the back end, perhaps not, but you are very disciplined
Mhm.
about when you purchase a property and paying the right price. So how do you translate what I would say is a very thoughtful approach, but just not documented in a pro forma way that most developers or investors are used to seeing or utilizing? How do you keep that discipline in your mind, knowing what you will pay, what construction costs are, and where you think the market is? How do you keep sharp on that?
So there's one number that I offer, and there's another number in my head that I won't go past, but I'm the
Hmm.
only one who knows that number.
Yeah.
Well, you and I got to the point where you knew the number before I knew the number of what I was going to do. So that was bizarre. But like for example, it's not big secret. 162 Bennett Bench we're under contract for. It's a good example. And I went up there and I said to myself, I know that I could produce a very nice modern glass contemporary home here for $3,000 a foot all in. I just know I can do it. So if it's 3,000 times 4,500 is 13.5 million, and if I'm paying X for the land, that's equals Z, whatever. I mean, so I know I'm going to be in for 25 million, 24 million, something like that. And if I did it on 27 spreadsheets, I'm going to get to the exact same place. And I might be plus or minus $1 million. The
Hmm.
guys that first of all, I'm very fortunate to have guys like Stuart and Jason and Marco Brown. I mean, these are like seriously intelligent humans. Eric Schmidt, et cetera. They don't want or need all the performers and everything. It's $3,000 a foot, guys. I might be 2,800. It might be 3,200. There's no chance it's 2,000 a foot. There's no chance it's 4,000 a foot. And within reason, that's what's going to happen. So I could waste all my time producing paperwork for you, or I could be working on getting the job done. And that's it. And I just believe that I can, within a reasonable range, find the right answer. By the way, I have been wrong and lost my ass a few times, right? But that's okay. It's just that it's all it's an algorithm, right? You're just cost averaging.
Can you share a bit about, because you have investors, what do they expect for a return? What do you look for, or what do they want from you, and how do you structure that so that for you the project makes sense, and also for them it makes sense to continue to invest with you?
Yeah. So there's 8 primary humans, right? We are not IRR driven because my average debt is around 37.5 to 42.5% LT C, not V.
Mhm.
I don't use
Mhm.
V. We go by
Yeah.
cost basis, right? So obviously, if what they do is they all convert what we create into a 65% LTC in their mind, and that's how they gauge my return, notwithstanding the fact I'm only using 40%.
Mhm.
But uh, there's no specific. I don't tell. We don't have. It's just they just say go out and do your best, and like sometimes we're going to make 4%, and sometimes we're going to make 30%. And if they're not picking and choosing, we probably do about 14 to 16% average over time, which would
Mhm.
equate to like 22% were we leverage like, a
Mhm.
non-moronic company.
Yep, makes perfect sense. Well, we've flown through a half hour. I want to wrap up here in a minute or two, and very much appreciate your time. I have two questions, and then I'll anything you might want to add. One is, are you using AI at all in what you're doing?
So so yeah, I'm kind of a literal person. So you said you. So the
Hmm.
bigger you, like the people around me are using it. I
Sure.
personally am not,
Hmm.
but I'm definitely garnering the benefit of what they're doing. Um, I'm a strong believer, notwithstanding the fact that I'm a complete Luddite, that AI will replace a lot of the humans involved in the process. I think to some extent, unfortunately for you, brokers as well. Uh, I believe that we need to get our head around it. The problem is that we're so bespoke in what we're creating that it's a little more difficult for AI to contribute on the architectural side for my specific business model. But I'm
Hmm.
sure we're going there where I'll just push a button and there's your 4,500 foot house on this piece of property.
Yeah.
The other thing is that I would rather make less money and still do business with and work with the people around me that I like.
Interesting. Yeah, one of the just sidebar things on AI, Bill Guth shared recently that he has appreciated being able to go up to a house
Mhm.
and hold up his phone with an AI generated image of the house showing, a different color scheme or different roof material or whatever, and it's very helpful standing right there in the moment to see the design. I think we're just on the cusp of how this will become helpful in all facets of business, and certainly for you in terms of how you look at it, but also ultimately how you sell the homes. So the last question I have for you is, we've been on this, I think, pretty wild ride in Aspen for a long time, and COVID really pushed us in a whole new direction as a market. You have a very crystal clear vision of a jewel box um, program that you're pursuing, and I think that's going to be wildly successful. Where do you see the Aspen real estate market going? Any surprises in the next year, 2, 3 years, or do you think it continues to be very strong at the high end and chug along as it has been?
So I think we need to put to the side the whole airport thing because I believe that that could be all types of disengagement for about 4, 5, 6 months. But that
Mhm.
aside, okay, because I think we'll normalize. On the planet Earth, normalized after meteor showers, sunspots, volcanoes, right, et cetera. So Aspen is no different than a planet. It's a place and it's going to normalize. I personally do not believe in the 60-year-old condo that is beat up, that needs a lot of work, and you got to fight through the rental paradigm with the city, and you've got to deal with all types of permitting issues, et cetera. Um, I believe that this has become a repository of wealth for a lot of wealthy people. If you look at Mykonos or Monaco or Marylebone or Mayfair in London, et cetera, they've been going for 5, 6, 700 years as repositories of wealth for very wealth, for these class of humans. And the one thing that no one's talking about, they're always saying, oh, there's 80 billionaires in Aspen who have a home, or 60 or whatever it is, right? That number's wrong. And I talked to you about it. It is completely wrong. If there are 60 billionaires with homes in Aspen, there are 300 of them because they all have mistresses with kids or wives with kids. And those kids are going to become billionaires. And those kids grew up coming to Aspen. It's what they know, it's what they like. The more bizarre the world becomes, the more they want to be here. And I think that there's a tremendous future here on the very high end, or I guess now it's sad to say 25 to 40 million jewel boxes on the middle high end. I cannot speak to, I've done a ton of stuff, like on the east side of town or in the Cemetery Lane area, et cetera. I can't speak to where that's going because I'm so blown away. I'm definitely a prisoner of my past. You and I we were buying stuff on Red Mountain for 2, 3 million bucks, if you remember. So I'm kind of, I just, and I moved away from that product. So I just don't know what's going to happen on that level.
Yeah, interesting. Well, very exciting to see where it goes, and I'm excited to see how you continue to shape in your own way the market here. That's all I have. So I want to thank you for being a
No, I
part of it
appreciate
and
it.
spending time with us this morning.
Yeah. Well, no one was more instrumental to the extent that I'm successful. And that's obviously a subjective moniker, but no one was more so as a contributor than you. So I appreciate you every day of my life.
The feeling is mutual, and thank you again, Mark, for being on,
Okay.
and have a great rest of your day.
It's
Appreciate
nice
it.
to see some of the faces up on the thing that I know.
Yeah.
I guess I'm not dead yet. Okay. Thank you,
Have a
Andrew.
great day. See
All
ya.
right. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.